Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Paul of Spheric Reptiles, and I thank you so much for tuning in to figure out why your damn snake has went on a diet. You know, hey, they do that, man. I mean, they go on diets or hunger strikes or whatever you want to call it, fasting, whatever you want to call it. The snakes and for ball pythons definitely go on hunger strikes. I mean, that's not to say that your ball python will, but if it does, here's some things to think about just so that you can be at ease and not panic. Lynn gets a lot of questions because she does all the social media things since I handle the snake husbandry. So she gets a lot of questions on Facebook and through Instagram where people are just saying, hey, my snake hasn't eaten in a month. What should I do? And then she looks at me and I'm like, you know what? It's not a whole lot you can do to make an animal eat. Now, if it's a hatchling, then you can assist feed there, but with an adult or teenager, subadult, ball python, you really don't want to assist feed them. You want them to come back around and eventually they will. But let me discuss some things, you know. So they went on a slim fast, right? So the things that you need to understand is how did it happen or why is it happening, and some things that you can do. So like before in a previous video, I discussed how snakes go through growth phases. So they go from a hatchling or a baby, then they go to like a kid stage, then they go through a teenager stage in which they go through puberty. Well, for snakes, that puberty phase is a little bit later. Typically for a female, that will be at around 18 to 24 months. And for a male, that will be around, I guess, you know, 7 to 12 months. Now, it depends on how much you're feeding. So it's really hard to say at what time will my snake stop eating? You know what I mean? So, and as I definitely don't miss meals, so I don't understand why they go on hunger fast. But when you only eat mice or rats, I can see how you could say, maybe I don't want to do it today. But so the first thing we need to think of, and I got a chart right behind me just to make sure I hit all the points, is that first, we got to make sure that our husbandry is right. So if you have a 90-degree Fahrenheit temperature or 32.22 degrees Celsius, that's your target range for, you know, your substrate temperature inside of your enclosure. So this isn't the first time, and I'm not the only one to say it, but get one of these guns off Amazon and make sure that the battery is good, and always check your temps, you know. And that's one of the best ways to make sure you do it. Provide a hide for your snakes so that they feel secure. So like we have clear tubs, so I have to put hides in every last one of them with the exception of the hatchling racks, but they have this black backing on them. So that kind of gives them that secure feeling where they only can see out of the front door. But for everything else, when I'm not videoing, I actually have a blanket that I cover this up, and I have a towel that I put over here to give them a little bit more security. Now, it's good for your snakes to see light, so kind of I think it helps with their biological clock so that they know when day and night is, even though they seem to always know. But, you know, the other thing that you can do is to check humidity. So the number one thing I found that works for humidity is when you're doing your water changes, then so you need to dump that water out somewhere. So if it's just like old water, I would take half of that or 3/4 of that and pour it into the tub on top of the cypress mulch or the coconut husk. Of course, if you have newspaper or paper towels or just butcher paper down there, you wouldn't want to do that because then it would just be too wet. But this will supply the 50 to about 70% humidity that the ball pythons actually need to just make sure that their respiratory rates stay constant, and you know, you want to keep them so they can stay moist, as well as to help in the promotion of their shedding of their skin. Now, if you can imagine, if you have really ashy skin, then it kind of messes with your day. It'll mess up your whole day. So then that's why we use lotions, baby oils, and stuff like that. If you use that, I mean, if you're lucky and don't have dry skin, hey, good for you. But you know, in this next thing, what I like to do is show you how I cover dehydration, which is the second thing. All right, guys, so to discuss how to get your snake further from dehydration is some of the things, you know, we're just trying to tie all of this in to make sense of it, right? and to give you some solutions on why your snake will go on a diet and things that you can do to just help them along this phase, because it's really a phase once they know how to eat. And so what we'll do is we'll use the example of our head clown, who's named Harley. She's 66% het pied. Of course, she's a female. We acquired her October of 2022 at 70 grams. And over the course of the next 6 months, she got from 70 grams to 825 grams. Our last positive weight for her was in August of 2023. She was 832 grams, and she went on fast. And she's kind of been fasting ever since. Now we just weighed her at the beginning of January, and she's 772 grams. So one of the things that is really important to do when your snakes are going through a fast is to continue to make sure that they remain hydrated, guys, because that's the thing that can kill an animal and actually prevent all mammals and reptiles and birds from eating. If you get too dehydrated and you don't have any energy, then it's hard for you to, swallow food. So here she is right here. And you see she still has good size, and this is about 700 grams. 772. So what I prepared for her, just to make sure that she stays hydrated, and I do this once a month for her just to make sure that she's still healthy. You see the things that we discussed before. She doesn't have any skin folds. There's nothing wrong with her eyes. They're not sunk in. She's still having great sheds, so at least she's remaining hydrated. And you see she's still active. She still has a good muscular tone to her body. But I prepared her, I guess, bath, so to speak. And what I've done is I've used some dechlorination drops in it just to make sure, and I got it set to, it's a slightly warm temperature so that, it's about 85 degrees, the water. So what I'll do is I'll put her in, I normally put her in butt first to make sure, and afterwards I make sure that if she might not cooperate with me. Well, let's see. I'll have to get her in. She might think that she's being cooked. So now that I have her in there, what I will do is I will time this for, and you can see how she's inside of there. It's not enough for her to drown, but I will time this for 20 minutes, and then I'll come back, and that's how I make sure that she remains hydrated. And, this is one of the most important parts of when your animal is off of feed. And, we'll discuss some of those other things in another segment. So I'll be back in 20 minutes when I remove her. It's about halfway through. It's about at the 10-minute point. But you can see how her head's underwater. And when she does her tongue flicks, inevitably she takes in a little bit of water. It's been 20 minutes since we've had her soaking. I'll go ahead and remove her from the Sterilite container, which also is our egg box container. Now, one of the things that I've learned after you do this, because if they had any constipation, you don't want that all over your snake room, right? So what I do is when I pick them up, I leave their tail ends in the water in case, and then she might start corkscrewing down, but also apply pressure to her abdomen to try to see if there's any poop that's going to come out. And I'll just repeat that, just sliding down. And if there isn't, then that's good. But I just want to make sure that so I'm not up here, her lungs are up here on this side. So what I'll do is I'll just hold her right before her lungs, like near her heart, up under her heart, and then just make sure that she's not trying to poop and she's trying to get into the other cages. So I use that momentum to just slightly squeeze the underside of her belly and to see if any poop is going to come out. And you'll know, because then the bottom half will start twisting like that. But it looks like she's okay. She's not going to poop. And if she does, she can poop in her container. But again, I'm going to go ahead and put Harley up after she's had her soaking. So now we covered dehydration. And I think that's really important just to do for your snakes. Again, if you have a snake that's eating all the time, they're going to get most of their water from their prey item. So whether it's a live or frozen thawed mouse or a rat, they're going to get the majority of their liquid from that. But it's always good to have that water dish in there just so that they can have they can get some water in case they need it. But if you soak them, that's almost a guarantee if you do that for 20 minutes that they will get hydrated one way or the other. I mean, they'll flick their tongue in there and inevitably drink some water, even if they're stubborn and they don't want to. So if you do have a slim fast snake, which this Morticia is definitely our black pastel head clown. She's definitely on a hunger strike right now, but this is going to discuss that third thing. So the growth phase. So when we got her, she, just like most of our snakes, we feed them when they're hatchlings once a week until they become an adult. And then if we're going to pair them up, we continue to feed them and then we pair a male up. I mean, it's a lot that goes into it, but if you're just a pet owner, I mean, even if you are a breeder and you're just thinking, I'm always trying to offer tips to everybody, but one of the things that you can do is just realize that when they go through puberty, then there's some changes there. So she was cranking along, and within 1 year, she got up to 1,000 grams, which is pretty good, maybe almost 1,100 grams, but then she hit a wall. She hit a wall. I wasn't feeding her too large of a prey size. I was feeding her a weaned rat, like I've always said before, weaned rats and then medium rats for the bigger ones. But one of the things that she did is she just went off a feed. And so I was feeding her frozen thawed, and I noticed that after 2 weeks, she was still not eating. So what I did is I offered her a live prey item, and I went to a smaller rat pup, and she refused that one. And then I offered her a mouse, a live mouse, and she refused that. So I was like, okay, here we go. Here we fucking go. So yeah, she's going through the growth phase, and so just put her in a soaking tub and say, here's your sauna, here's your spa day, and you know, so I'm just going to wait her out and see. But one of the things that you can tell from dehydration is they'll have skin folds, they'll have sunken eyes, they'll have improper sheds. That's the one way that you can tell if your snake's dehydrated. But because if they still have good body girth, and you got to have other things that you can look for, right? So that's one of the things that you do, guys. I mean, so the growth phase from 800 to 1,000 grams, your snake might hit a wall. They might not. Not all of ours have. I mean, but the 3 that have, it all started around 800 grams to 1,000 grams, and then they just stopped. But there again, that's the benefit of weighing them out every month. And if they are, just give them a spa day. Shit, especially if they're a female snake. I don't know about the male snakes, but the female snakes seem to really appreciate the spa day. I don't know. Maybe it's a sex thing. I'm just kidding. It might not be. But hey, guys, that's it. But now I'll talk about some of the other things. So prey size. So what you see is like typically in hatchlings, they start out on a mouse hopper, and then you get them converted over to a rat pup, and then you go frozen thawed. And if you can do that successfully, it's a win-win, right? Well, what if you keep feeding, and then so for that one day, you fed all your frozen thawed weaned rats, and you feed alive, like a small rat, to another animal, right? So to one of your adults, but they refuse it. So then you take that small rat, and instead of saying, well, I'm going to euthanize it, I'll just go ahead and feed it to one of my snakes. So that can actually, like if they eat a big prey size, it can be so much for them, for their digestive systems, that it can actually overload them. So I would really recommend staying with the sizes, like so a weaned rat up until they hit that 1,200 or even 1,300 or 1,400 gram. Like now you're about to breed them, and the pairing, since they're developing follicles, that's generally a good time to switch them over to a larger prey size. But as long as they're just living and they're sticking around that 5 millimeter follicle time after they go through puberty, then you know, that's good. That way you don't overload their system. So while I have her in my hand, I will actually talk about the other things. So and I've already checked all our snakes for this, but mites. So if you have any mites, always look for insects. Like I know you guys remember from a previous video, I lost a boa constrictor, and that's kind of why I got out of reptiles, due to a spider bite. So I need you guys to check, you know, maybe not every month, but you know when the seasons change, like when it's wintertime, insects come in and then spiders come in the spring. So be sure to check your enclosures and your setups and the rack systems. If you can, check them, clean them to make sure that there's no spiders taken up or no ants or anything like that, or any type of parasite. So, but if you do, we use the Miracle Spray from Miracle Reptile Spray, and I just get it from Chewy. It comes in a big gallon jug. In fact, let me see if I can grab that for you right now. Oh, let's see. It's way back there. So, and I did a video on this as well, and I'll put that link up there. But here's that miracle spray. It comes in a big gallon. And of course, to use it, I put it in this spray bottle because I mean, this is easier. And I just spray this on a paper towel, and I wipe the snake from head to tail in the treatment. And then I'll put them on some paper or paper towels just while they're being treated for mites. And then at that point, definitely want to quarantine them away from the other animals. But hey, you know, that's another thing. And then the next thing is the respiratory infections. I showed you guys from a previous video how I treat respiratory infections, in which I use Listerine to clean out the mouth. And I'll put this video here. So if you're interested in that and you think that's something that your animal is doing, it's like maybe they're wheezing and you see some liquid come, there shouldn't be any liquid in their mouth. But if you hear them wheezing and you see any liquid coming out of their mouth, then watch this video and it'll go over the step-by-step how I set up the chamber with the Vicks Vapor Rub. And I do all of that stuff so that, you know, we can treat that if it's a mild case, and then you'd have to go to the vet otherwise. But for the last thing for the dieting is that early growth. So most of the time when people are raising animals to breed, they feed them once a week, right? So the one thing that you can remember is that if you were to feed your animals once every 2 weeks, then they're probably going to be hungry when you go to feed them again. And I know that for us personally, any animal during this winter time that we're not breeding, we definitely feed them once every other week, with the exception of the hatchlings. So the breeding females and the breeding males and the hatchlings get offered a prey item every week. Everybody else is getting one every other week. And what that'll do is that'll help clean out their system so that maybe they won't even go on a fast. But typically, like, you're not going to see a ball python reach 1,000 grams in 1 year if you're not feeding them every week. I mean, you're just not going to see it. You'll see that snake reach maybe 600 grams, maybe 550 grams, which is more like what they would do in the wild. And I mean, unless they run across a surplus and then they just eat and eat and eat and eat and eat, and then they wouldn't eat again for another 3 months. So that's normal for them. But typically speaking, that's one way. If you want to make sure that your snake will continue to eat all the time, you want to feed them every other week or twice a month. And so for her, she would just be getting one weaned rat twice a month. Now, to get her to growth size, and one way that you can spur, you know, when she gets back on food, when she gets off her Slim Fast or whatever, or Weight Watchers, then we'll just crank it back up to, you know, once a week. So, but hey guys, those are the tips that I have. So it's husbandry, whether it's hydration or dehydration, then there's a growth phase, 800 to 1,000 grams, then it's prey size. I'm sticking with definitely those 3 sizes, the rat pups, the weaned rats, and then maybe the small to medium rats for your full-blown adult females. Then checking for mites, checking for respiratory infections and treating it. And then you got to remember that, you know, if you want, you know, then you could actually control their digestive rates by feeding once a week or every other week. So, guys, I really hope that this helped. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'm really interested in the comments because I'm just really making this stuff because this is the stuff that I come across in dealing with reptiles over the years. Of course, when I had boa constrictors and reticulated pythons, Burmese pythons, and anaconda, I never had an issue with eating. It seems like they were always ready to eat. But when I had ball pythons at that time too, I just had adult ball pythons. They were rescued, so I don't really know if they would have been like that, but I was feeding them every other week anyway. So, but hey guys, I just thank you so much for tuning in. And Morticia, hopefully we can get her off this damn fast. But, you know, she's still healthy. And it's all part of what I always say, guys. Enjoy your time with your reptiles and enjoy your time with your family.